It was a day like any other on Earth, until the announcement came. At 11 o'clock a.m., Earth's communication networks, from the smallest radio stations to the largest global news agencies, were suddenly flooded with the same message. Across every screen, every news broadcast, the message was clear. The Galactic Federation has declared war on humanity. The statement was made by Supreme Commander Jarek, leader of the Galactic Federation, an alliance of powerful alien species who ruled over vast regions of the galaxy. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's, their ships capable of moving between star systems in the blink of an eye, and their weaponry was unmatched in its destructive power. The message was not a warning, but a declaration. The Federation claimed that humanity's rapid technological advancements had become a threat to the order of the galaxy. The Federation had decided that it was time to put an end to the growing human presence in space, and they would do it swiftly. Earth was to be the first target. At first, many believed it was some kind of prank. Earth had been the subject of several hoaxes over the years, but this was different. The transmission was too professional, the tone too serious. And then the Federation's fleet, an immense collection of warships, appeared in the skies above Earth's atmosphere. Satellites picked up hundreds of ships, each one a massive vessel with glowing engines and shields that made them appear like giants compared to anything humanity had ever built. Governments around the world went into a panic. Military leaders scrambled to respond, and in every city across the planet, people stared at their screens in disbelief. For years, humanity had dreamed of exploring the stars, of meeting alien species, and of becoming a part of the greater galactic community. But now, that dream seemed like a cruel joke. The world was facing a threat it wasn't prepared for, and the reality set in. The Federation's warships were real. World leaders held emergency meetings, and the United Nations quickly called for global unity. The situation was dire, but they had no choice but to act. Earth's military forces, once fragmented and scattered across nations, now found themselves forced to work together in the face of an unprecedented crisis. In military bunkers and command centers, officers and generals tried to understand what they were up against. Their weapons, their technology, their strategies. Nothing seemed to match the power of the Federation's fleet. Human weapons were primitive compared to the destructive energy the Federation possessed. Earth's greatest minds tried to calculate the odds, but they all reached the same conclusion. Humanity was outmatched. And yet, even in the face of such overwhelming odds, humanity didn't give up. They had faced impossible challenges before. They had survived world wars, natural disasters, and pandemics. They had always found a way to persevere. And now, as the Federation's ships hovered above the planet, humanity's first response was not one of fear, but of defiance. A plan was put into motion. Nations worked together to build new weapon systems, to fortify defenses, and to ready their best pilots and soldiers. Earth's scientists, who had long been working on space exploration projects, now turned their focus toward developing technologies that might give humanity a fighting chance. One group of scientists, led by Dr. Leela Hayes, was tasked with researching new methods of counteracting the Federation's technology. Dr. Hayes had spent most of her career studying quantum mechanics and space travel, but now she found herself in a race against time. She and her team worked tirelessly, gathering data from every available source and testing ideas that had once seemed impossible. They were hoping to discover something that could turn the tide of war, something that would give humanity a fighting chance. But as the days passed, the reality of the situation began to sink in. The Federation's fleet was not just a distant threat. They were already within striking distance, their ships gliding silently through Earth's atmosphere. Every country on the planet was under the shadow of their arrival. Every nation, every person, was waiting for the moment when the first shot would be fired. It wasn't long before the Federation made their first move. A single ship, larger than any human-made vessel, descended over the city of New York. It hovered silently in the sky, a reminder of the Federation's overwhelming power. News outlets broadcast the event live, showing the massive ship blocking out the sun as it loomed above the skyline. It was a symbol of what was to come. But humanity, despite the fear and uncertainty, was not without hope. As the Federation's ships began to move into position, Earth's military forces, despite being outgunned, prepared for the worst. Every country, from the United States to Russia to China, was in full defense mode. The global alliance that had been formed in such a short time had only one goal: to survive. And in the midst of all the chaos, Dr. Hayes and her team were working, driven by a sense of urgency unlike anything they had ever felt before. The clock was ticking, and the fate of humanity rested on their ability to find something, anything, that could give them an edge. The Federation had declared war, but humanity would not go down without a fight. The day after the Federation's declaration of war, the world found itself in chaos. Governments scrambled to assemble their forces, while citizens, from bustling city streets to quiet rural villages, were gripped by fear. The vast fleet of Federation ships hovered above Earth, their sheer size and power a constant reminder of humanity's vulnerability. The sky, once a symbol of hope and exploration, now felt like a trap. Across the globe, leaders rushed to address their nations. In the United States, President Elizabeth Carter stood at the front of a room filled with military officers and top advisors. The air was thick with tension, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. "We are facing an enemy unlike any we've encountered," she said, her voice steady but strained. "We need every resource, every mind, every effort working together. This is not just a war for survival. It is a war for our future." In the United Kingdom, Prime Minister James Holloway addressed the nation, urging calm and unity. "We must come together, regardless of our differences. This is a threat to humanity as a whole, not any one nation. We must stand united, or we will fall divided." But unity, though necessary, was not enough to calm the rising panic. Social media was flooded with messages, some filled with disbelief, others with fear, and a few with defiance. Some people tried to remain optimistic, believing that humanity would find a way to survive. Others, however, resigned themselves to the thought that this might be the end of everything they had ever known. Military leaders, who had spent their careers preparing for conflicts on Earth, now found themselves preparing for an enemy that seemed to have no equal. Generals and commanders worked around the clock, rethinking strategies and coordinating with other nations. There was no time for second-guessing. They needed to act fast, even if they didn't have all the answers. Earth's defense systems were advanced, but no one had ever anticipated an invasion from a species that could travel across star systems with ease. The Federation's technology was a mystery, and there was no guarantee that Earth's weapons would even make a dent. Meanwhile, in the underground labs of the world's top scientific organizations, a different kind of urgency took hold. Dr. Leela Hayes, a physicist and engineer who had been part of the team working on advanced space technologies, found herself thrust into a project far more critical than anything she had ever worked on before. She had spent her career studying quantum physics and theoretical space travel, but now she had to shift gears. Earth needed something, anything, that could give them a fighting chance. Dr. Hayes and her team of brilliant minds were working around the clock, analyzing every scrap of data they could gather. The Federation's ships were too advanced for conventional weapons, and their shields were impervious to anything humanity had in its arsenal. But there had to be a way. Humanity had always found a way, even when faced with the impossible. Late into the night, Dr. Hayes stared at the screens in front of her. A series of calculations and formulas danced across the digital displays, but the solutions still eluded her. There must be a way to level the playing field, she muttered under her breath, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She looked around at her team, some of the brightest minds humanity had to offer. Each person was as determined as she was, but there was no easy answer. As the days passed, the Federation's fleet remained in place, their ships hovering ominously over the planet. They had not made any further moves, but that only added to the uncertainty. Earth's leaders couldn't afford to wait and see. Every moment that passed was a moment closer to an attack, and as the Federation continued to observe, they seemed to be waiting for something, too, something that Earth didn't yet understand. Back on the streets of Earth's cities, life continued, though it was different now. People looked up at the sky with unease, wondering if this would be the day when the Federation would strike. Some businesses closed down, stock markets began to tumble, and flights were grounded. Military bases around the world were put on high alert. Cities prepared for evacuation plans, while others braced for a full-scale assault. But even in the midst of all the panic, some found solace in the smallest of things. Families huddled together, discussing their plans for the future. Communities began to organize, pooling resources and knowledge, preparing for whatever might come. It was in these moments, when people looked out for each other, that humanity's true strength began to shine through. Dr. Hayes and her team were not the only ones working tirelessly. Across the world, engineers, scientists, and military strategists worked together in ways they had never done before. People who had once been competitors were now collaborators, their collective focus singular: survival. In the quiet hours of the night, as the world held its breath, there was an unspoken understanding. The Federation's threat was real, but humanity had always thrived in the face of adversity. It had survived wars, disease, and disasters. Now faced with the greatest challenge of all, humanity's ingenuity and determination would be put to the test. And so, with every passing hour, the tension grew. But in the hearts of those who still believed, there was a glimmer of hope. Earth might have been caught off guard, but humanity had something the Federation didn't understand, something that would not be defeated by weapons or shields. It was the ability to adapt, to overcome, and to innovate in ways that no one, not even the Federation, could predict. The days following the Federation's declaration of war were filled with uncertainty, fear, and a sense of urgency that gripped the entire planet. The situation seemed hopeless, and humanity's best minds, including Dr. Leela Hayes and her team, were left with the heavy burden of finding a solution. Every hour that passed brought them closer to the inevitable confrontation, and time was running out. But in those dark moments of panic, a glimmer of hope began to form. Dr. Hayes sat in her lab, staring at the large holographic screen that filled the room. The data and calculations before her were complex, but they held the potential to change everything. She had spent her life working on quantum mechanics and advanced technologies, but this was unlike anything she had ever imagined. The answer lay not in brute force or traditional weaponry, but in something far more subtle, a new way of thinking. Perhaps it's not about trying to beat them at their own game, she thought aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe it's about thinking differently, unlocking a power within humanity that we haven't even fully realized yet. For months, Dr. Hayes had been working on a project she had only shared with a handful of trusted colleagues. It wasn't something her team had intended for war, but now, with the Federation threatening their very existence, she could see how it might be the key to survival. The Quantum Convergence Engine, a device designed to enhance human cognition and creativity, could hold the answer. The concept behind the engine was simple in theory but difficult to execute. By connecting multiple human minds through advanced neural interfaces, it would allow people to share their thoughts and ideas instantaneously. It was a technology that could amplify the collective intelligence of humanity to levels never before imagined. If the project worked, it could allow humans to think as one, united in purpose and innovation. Dr. Hayes knew the risks. If the quantum convergence engine failed, the results could be catastrophic. It could cause irreversible damage to the human brain, or worse, it might short-circuit the very essence of what made them human. But with the Federation's fleet already hovering over Earth, and the planet's defenses seemingly powerless, the risks were outweighed by the potential for success. She gathered her team, a group of scientists and engineers who had been working alongside her for years, each one a brilliant mind in their own right. "We don't have time to waste," she said firmly, her voice steady but full of determination. We need to activate the quantum convergence engine now. It's our only chance. Her team, although filled with doubts, trusted her. They knew that humanity's survival depended on this experiment. There was no turning back now. The lab buzzed with activity as they prepared to link the first group of test subjects to the machine. The room was filled with wires, computers, and monitors, all working in perfect sync. The team carefully attached neural interfaces to the volunteers, 5 men and women, each from a different part of the world. They were ordinary people, not soldiers or scientists, but they represented the best of humanity's creativity, courage, and determination. The moment the machine was activated, a strange stillness filled the room. A low hum echoed through the air as the quantum convergence engine began to function. Dr. Hayes watched anxiously as the data on the screens flickered, showing the neural connections being formed between the test subjects. At first, there was silence, and then, a single voice rang out, not from any one person, but from all of them at once. "We're connected," the voice said, but it wasn't just one voice. It was a chorus of thoughts, flowing seamlessly between the volunteers. Their individual minds had merged into a collective consciousness. They could now think together, share ideas and concepts faster than ever before. It was as if the boundaries of human knowledge had been broken down, and in that moment, the potential for limitless innovation became a reality. Dr. Hayes watched in awe as the test subjects began to communicate in ways that were impossible just hours before. Ideas flowed freely between them, and solutions to complex problems began to form almost instantly. One volunteer suggested a new design for a spacecraft capable of withstanding the Federation's weapons. Another shared a method for creating energy shields that could disrupt the Federation's advanced technology. Within minutes, the group had brainstormed a series of new weapons and defense strategies, ideas that had never even crossed the minds of the world's top military experts. The machine was working. Humanity's collective intelligence had been unlocked, and the possibilities were endless. The team quickly got to work, using the new ideas to modify Earth's existing military technology. They didn't have much time, but the sheer speed at which they were now able to innovate gave them a fighting chance. With every new thought shared, new solutions emerged. Ideas that would have taken years to develop were now being realized in hours. Meanwhile, as the Federation's fleet continued to orbit Earth, the world's leaders received a report from the scientists. It was a mix of excitement and caution. Humanity had developed a new weapon, one that could match the Federation's superior technology. The plan was ready. It wasn't just about defending the planet anymore. Humanity was going on the offensive. The quantum convergence engine had done more than just enhance human cognition. It had given humanity the edge it needed to fight back. With their minds now linked, the brightest minds from every corner of the world were united in purpose. For the first time, humanity wasn't working in isolation. They were working as one. As Dr. Hayes looked at the data, she couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. The Federation may have thought they could easily destroy humanity, but they had underestimated something far more powerful: humanity's ability to adapt, to innovate, and to come together in the face of unimaginable challenges. The war was just beginning, but now, humanity had a fighting chance. The world held its breath as the Federation's fleet loomed above Earth. The vast ships, powerful beyond imagination, had yet to make their move. Humanity's military was prepared for the worst, but after days of watching and waiting, they had no idea when the attack would begin. The uncertainty was almost more unsettling than the threat itself. Earth's leaders knew they couldn't afford to be passive any longer. The Federation's ships were far too powerful to leave unchecked. In the war rooms of Earth's military bases, high-ranking officers were deep in discussion. Everyone knew the odds were against them. But now that they had the new technology from the quantum convergence engine, they had a new sense of purpose. With the collective intelligence of humanity working together, they were ready to strike. They just needed a plan that would catch the Federation off guard. Dr. Leela Hayes and her team, still working tirelessly, had developed several strategies based on the rapid innovations made possible by the collective human mind. The new spacecraft designs, shields, and weapons were ready. The entire world now had the chance to fight back. But even as these advancements were being rolled out, one question remained: would it be enough? As the Federation continued to hover in Earth's orbit, a sense of unease started to build in their ranks. Supreme Commander Jirek, leader of the Federation, sat in his command ship, his mind racing. His fleet, so powerful and vast, had yet to fire a single shot. He had not expected the humans to fight back in any meaningful way. In the past, every species they had encountered had crumbled before them. But these humans were different. They had done something no one in the Federation had anticipated. They had united. And now, they had developed new technology that was unlike anything Jirek had ever seen. It wasn't just their weapons that troubled him. It was their creativity. In a matter of days, the humans had developed an entirely new form of warfare. It was clear they had tapped into something beyond their conventional understanding, something that went far deeper than just military tactics. He was used to enemies who relied on brute strength, but humanity was not like that. They had become unpredictable, and that made them dangerous. Jirek's advisors urged him to act quickly. His fleet was ready to destroy Earth, to extinguish the threat before it could grow stronger. But the Supreme Commander hesitated. He looked out at the blue planet below, sensing something he had never experienced before: respect. There was something about humanity's ability to adapt and innovate that fascinated him. It wasn't just their weapons, it was their spirit. He knew that no matter how much power his fleet had, it would not be enough if the humans kept thinking in new ways. A deep internal conflict began to stir within Jirek. He had come to Earth with the sole purpose of bringing an end to humanity's rapid rise, but he found himself questioning the purpose of such an action. Could there be another way? Could there be a chance for cooperation rather than destruction? Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Hayes and her team worked around the clock. The new human-made ships, powered by energy sources never before seen, were now ready for deployment. These ships weren't just advanced, they were unpredictable. The Federation's fleet, with all its power, would not be able to anticipate the strategies that the humans had designed. But as the clock ticked down, it became clear that the real challenge would not be in the battle itself, but in finding a way to communicate with the Federation to somehow avoid all-out war. In a quiet, high-level meeting, President Carter and the world's top diplomats began to discuss a new approach. They had developed a plan, an idea that could change the course of the war without firing a single shot. With the quantum convergence engine, humanity now had the ability to think and act as one. What if they could offer the Federation something unexpected? What if they could turn the tables by offering a peaceful resolution? It was a risky move, but one they felt might be their only hope. Jirek doesn't want to destroy Earth, President Carter said, her voice firm but filled with conviction. He's a strategist, not a tyrant. If we can reach him, we might have a chance. The plan was simple but daring. Rather than preparing for an all-out assault, they would send a team to meet with the Federation's leader. The team, led by Dr. Hayes, would bring with them the very technology that had given humanity the edge: the quantum convergence engine. The message would be clear. Humanity was not a threat, but an opportunity for collaboration. They were offering to share their newfound knowledge and work together to build a future where both species could coexist and thrive. As Dr. Hayes prepared for the mission, she couldn't shake the feeling that the stakes had never been higher. She had seen the power of the quantum convergence engine firsthand, and she knew it could change the course of history. But would the Federation accept humanity's offer, or would they reject it and continue their path toward destruction? The moment of truth came when the human delegation, led by Dr. Hayes, boarded a newly designed spacecraft. The ship was unlike any that Earth had ever built before. Its sleek design, powered by the latest technology, was a testament to humanity's ability to innovate in the face of crisis. It was a symbol of hope, a symbol of humanity's potential to shape its own destiny. As the ship approached the Federation's flagship, the tension in the air was palpable. This was it. Earth's future rested on the outcome of this meeting. Dr. Hayes looked out at the approaching Federation fleet, her heart pounding. Would Jarek listen? Would he see that humanity was not a force to be reckoned with through violence, but through collaboration? In the silence of space, everything seemed to hang in the balance. The Federation had come to Earth with the intention of destroying humanity. But now, as the human delegation drew closer, something unexpected was happening. A shift that could change the course of history. The spaceship carrying Dr. Leela Hayes and her delegation cut through the cold expanse of space, its sleek design cutting a sharp line against the black void. Inside, tension buzzed. The team, consisting of top diplomats, engineers, and scientists, was both hopeful and apprehensive. This mission was a delicate balance. They were about to offer the Federation a chance to talk, to join forces rather than destroy everything. It was a gamble, one that could either save humanity or lead to its downfall. Dr. Hayes sat quietly at the front of the ship, her mind racing. The quantum convergence engine had unlocked humanity's potential for cooperation and innovation, but she knew that wasn't enough. Words and actions would be the true test. Would Zarak, the leader of the Federation, truly see the value in collaboration, or was humanity simply too small, too weak, for them to consider peace? "Everything's ready," said Commander Rachel Lee, who was in charge of the delegation's security. "We'll be in Federation space in less than an hour. No turning back now." Dr. Hayes nodded, her hands resting on the table before her. She had spent countless hours preparing for this moment. They had studied everything about the Federation, their customs, their values, and their methods of communication. This wasn't just about presenting the quantum convergence engine or new weapons. It was about understanding the Federation's perspective, showing them that humanity wasn't just a species to be conquered, but one with the potential for great things. "Dr. Hayes," said Ambassador Juan Torres, one of the diplomats on the mission, "do you really think Zarak will listen to us? He's the commander of the Federation, a race that has dominated countless worlds. Why would he care about anything we have to offer?" Dr. Hayes turned to face him, her eyes steady. "I believe he will listen because he's a strategist. The Federation has always been about control and power, but they're not invincible. They're as vulnerable as any other species, especially when it comes to their ability to adapt. We're not offering them surrender. We're offering them a chance to evolve, to think in new ways." Her words hung in the air as the ship approached the Federation's flagship. It was a massive vessel, far larger than anything humanity had ever built, its surface covered in advanced armor and technologies. The ship itself was an intimidating sight, but Dr. Hayes stood firm, her mind focused on the mission. As they docked with the Federation ship, a chill ran through the crew. This was it. They were about to enter the heart of the Federation's power, where Zarak and his top officers waited. Would they be received as diplomats or as prisoners? The doors to the Federation ship opened with a hiss, and the humans were escorted down a long, sterile corridor. The atmosphere was cold and clinical, a stark contrast to the warmth and chaos of Earth. The soldiers that greeted them wore dark, emotionless expressions. Their bodies were tall and imposing, their technology far beyond anything humanity had ever known. But there was no hostility in their movements, just curiosity. Finally, they reached the command center, a vast room filled with monitors, holograms, and advanced communication systems. At the center of the room stood Supreme Commander Zarak. His towering form was unmistakable, his gaze sharp and calculating. He was flanked by several high-ranking officers, their faces unreadable. Dr. Hayes took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She stepped forward, followed by her delegation. Zarak's eyes locked onto her as she approached, and for a moment, the room was silent. The air seemed thick with tension, but Dr. Hayes held her ground. "I am Dr. Leela Hayes," she began, her voice calm but strong. And this is my delegation. We have come to offer a new path, one of cooperation, not conflict. Jarek studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. You think you can change the course of this war with words? His voice was deep and resonant, carrying an authority that seemed to fill the room. Your species is weak. You cannot match the might of the Federation. Dr. Hayes didn't flinch. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to show you that humanity has something you don't understand, a capacity for innovation, for growth. We've developed a technology that has the potential to change everything. It can link our minds together, allowing us to think as one. It could enhance your own abilities, your own strategies. Together, we could create something none of us could achieve alone. Zyrek's eyes narrowed, his interest piqued. And what exactly do you propose? That we accept your technology? That we simply stop our plans because you say so? Dr. Hayes shook her head. No, I'm proposing that we join forces. We're not asking for surrender. We're asking for a partnership. The Federation has always believed in strength, in power. But what if strength is not just in your weapons, but in your minds? We've proven that humans can think together in ways that no one thought possible. Imagine what we could achieve if we shared that ability. Imagine what we could build. The room was silent for a moment as Chirac processed her words. His officers exchanged uncertain glances. They were used to hearing about human resistance, but this was different. This was not the typical plea for mercy or surrender. This was a challenge to their very way of thinking, a challenge to their belief that power was the ultimate answer. Jarek's voice broke the silence. I do not trust you, human. Your offer seems tempting, but it is also dangerous. You expect me to believe that your species, with all its flaws, could contribute to the Federation in a meaningful way. We've already begun proving it, Dr. Hayes said, her voice steady. We've used the technology to create new weapons, new defenses, things that could turn the tide of this war. But that's not why we're here. We're here because we believe that collaboration is the key to progress. The Federation's way of conquering the galaxy has brought nothing but destruction. But together, we could achieve something greater. Jarek's gaze softened, just slightly. And if I agree to this partnership, what do you expect in return? Dr. Hayes took a deep breath. A chance for humanity to prove that we can offer something of value. A chance for us all to evolve beyond the conflict that has defined so many species before us. Jarek stood still for a long moment, contemplating. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the Federation itself, was hanging in the balance. The answer was not simple, but for the first time, he wasn't sure that strength alone was enough. I will consider your proposal, Dr. Hayes, he said at last. But understand this. If you betray me, if your intentions prove false, we will have no choice but to destroy you. The threat hung in the air, but Dr. Hayes stood firm. This was only the beginning of their new path, and despite the risks, she knew that humanity had made the right choice. The fate of both their species now rested on this fragile thread of hope. Days passed since Dr. Leela Hayes and her delegation had met with Supreme Commander Jarek. The atmosphere on Earth was thick with anticipation, uncertainty, and hope. Dr. Hayes had done what many thought was impossible. She had convinced the Federation to consider a new path. A path where humanity and the Federation might work together, not as enemies, but as partners. But what would come of it? Would Jarek follow through, or was this just another tactic to gain the upper hand? Back on Earth, the world held its breath. The quantum convergence engine had brought humanity to a new level of collaboration, allowing them to think and create together in ways that had never been imagined before. This new technology had allowed them to develop advanced weapons, energy shields, and other tools that could protect Earth from the Federation's fleet. But now, the question was no longer about defense. It was about how to make the Federation see that cooperation was the way forward. Dr. Hayes and her team had done their part. They had shared the human breakthroughs, the new technology that had been made possible by linking minds through the quantum convergence engine. But they knew that words alone were not enough. They needed to show the Federation, especially Jarak, that the future they were proposing was not just a dream. It was a reality waiting to be realized. Jarak's decision came sooner than expected. After several days of deliberation, he sent a transmission to Earth. His words, once filled with harshness, were now laced with something different, a trace of curiosity. He wanted to meet again. This time, he would bring a small delegation of Federation leaders to Earth. The meeting would take place at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and the fate of both species would hang in the balance. Dr. Hayes was once again at the heart of the discussions, preparing for a second round of talks. She understood that this meeting would be crucial. Jarak's trust had not been won yet, and it was still unclear whether the Federation would be willing to work with humanity. The future of Earth and the Federation would depend on the choices made in that room. When the day of the meeting arrived, the world watched. The leaders of the Federation arrived in their advanced ships, their sleek, dark vessels hovering over New York City. The citizens of Earth looked up in awe, knowing that this was no ordinary visit. It was a chance, perhaps the only chance, to secure a future of peace. Dr. Hayes, along with President Carter and the diplomats who had worked tirelessly on the negotiations, stood at the front of the United Nations building. The room was filled with tension, but there was also a sense of hope. This meeting could change everything. Jarak and his delegation entered the room, their tall, imposing forms making the atmosphere feel even heavier. The Federation leaders stood silently, observing Earth's representatives with calculating eyes. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was broken when Dr. Hayes stepped forward, her voice steady. "Supreme Commander Jarak," she began, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us again. This is a moment of great importance, not just for humanity, but for the Federation as well. We have a chance to build something better together. We're not asking for surrender. We're asking for collaboration." Jarak's eyes scanned the room, and for a moment, it seemed as though he might reject the offer. But then he spoke. "Your species," he said, his voice deep and even, "has surprised me. I did not expect you to be capable of such innovation or cooperation. I've spent my entire life leading the Federation with the belief that power and strength are the keys to survival. But you have shown me that there is another way. The question now is whether we can truly work together without undermining each other." Dr. Hayes nodded, understanding the depth of Jarak's words. "We know that trust has to be earned, but we believe that, together, we can create something neither of us could achieve alone. We can build a future that transcends war. We can explore the galaxy, learn from each other, and grow." Jarak was silent for a long moment. He looked at the human leaders around him, at President Carter, at Dr. Hayes, and at the others who had taken a risk by opening this door to peace. They were not asking for unconditional surrender, nor were they pleading for survival. They were offering a chance for something greater. Jarak had seen the power of the quantum convergence engine. He had seen the potential that humanity had unlocked within themselves. But was that enough to take the next step? "I have been wrong about your species," Jarak said, finally breaking the silence. "You are not the weak, fragmented species I once thought you to be. You have a strength that is different, one that I had underestimated. Perhaps there is value in your approach. Perhaps together we can create something new. But let me be clear, this will not be easy. We will need to build trust, to learn how to work together. This will require great effort from both sides." Dr. Hayes nodded again, her heart pounding with a mix of relief and caution. This was what they had hoped for. This was the moment that could shape the future of both species. But she knew that this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, and there would be those on both sides who would resist this new alliance. But humanity had proven something crucial over the past few weeks. They were not defined by their past mistakes or their struggles. They were defined by their ability to adapt, to think, and to work together. "We understand," Dr. Hayes said, her voice firm. We are ready to take that step with you. Together, we will build a future." Girac nodded, his expression still unreadable but filled with something new. Hope. The Federation's path was changing, and so was humanity's. It was no longer about war. It was about collaboration, about a future where two species, once enemies, could unite and work for the greater good. And as the meeting continued, the world began to realize that the impossible had happened. A war had been averted, and the potential for a brighter future had just begun. The skies above Earth were no longer filled with the shadow of warships. The fear that had once gripped humanity was fading, replaced by something new: hope. The negotiations between the Federation and Earth had begun a new chapter, one that neither side had ever imagined possible. Dr. Leela Hayes sat in the observation deck of the United Nations headquarters, staring at the stars. Only weeks ago, those same stars had seemed like a battleground waiting to ignite. Now, they held a different promise. She had spent years studying the universe, believing that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to adapt and evolve. Now, that belief had been tested and proven true. Behind her, Supreme Commander Girac entered the room, his heavy footsteps echoing softly against the metallic floor. His presence was no longer intimidating, at least not to her. There was still a hardness in his expression, but it was no longer the face of an enemy. "You seem deep in thought, Dr. Hayes," Girac said, his voice calm but curious. She turned to face him, offering a small smile. "I'm just thinking about how quickly everything changed. A war that should have lasted for years ended in a single day. And now, here we are, standing at the edge of something entirely new." Girac nodded, stepping closer to the large window overlooking Earth. His eyes scanned the blue planet, taking in its beauty. "I was raised to believe that strength was everything. That power was the only path to survival. But your people have shown me something different. Your strength does not come from domination. It comes from unity, from your ability to work together in ways we never considered possible." Dr. Hayes studied him carefully. "And what do you think of that now?" There was a pause before Girac responded. "I think there is wisdom in it. The Federation has conquered many worlds, but we have never built true alliances. We have always assumed that our way was the only way. Now, I see that perhaps we have been mistaken." Dr. Hayes felt a sense of relief. Girac's words confirmed what she had hoped. This wasn't just a temporary truce. This was the beginning of something bigger. "We have already begun working on integrating some of our technologies," she said. "Scientists from both sides are collaborating. We are learning from each other, and our understanding of the universe is expanding faster than ever before. The quantum convergence engine is just the beginning." Girac turned to her, curiosity in his eyes. "And what is the next step?" Dr. Hayes took a deep breath. "Trust, real trust, not just between leaders, but between our people. It will take time. There will be those who resist, on both sides. But if we keep working together, we can create something truly remarkable. A new alliance, one that is not based on conquest, but on shared progress." Girac considered her words carefully before responding. "It will not be easy." "No, it won't," Dr. Hayes agreed. "But nothing worth building ever is." The days that followed were filled with historic changes. The first Federation scientists arrived on Earth, working side by side with humans. At the same time, human engineers were invited to Federation research stations. Information that had once been guarded with secrecy was now being exchanged. New energy sources were being developed, medical advancements were being shared, and technology was evolving at an unprecedented rate. President Carter addressed the world, announcing that Earth and the Federation had officially entered an era of cooperation. There were skeptics, of course. Some feared that the Federation would still turn on humanity. Others worried that humans would become too dependent on their former enemies. But despite the doubts, progress continued. For the first time in history, humans were no longer alone in the universe. One of the greatest moments came when the Federation officially lifted its policy of planetary domination. Instead of conquering weaker civilizations, they began offering partnerships, inviting others to join this new age of discovery. It was a decision that shook the galaxy. As weeks turned into months, the alliance grew stronger. Human and Federation fleets no longer faced each other as enemies, but as explorers venturing into the unknown together. New worlds were being discovered, and for the first time, humanity had the resources to truly reach for the stars. Dr. Hayes stood in the control center of the first joint Human Federation research vessel, watching as they prepared to launch on their first mission beyond the known sectors of space. She felt a deep sense of pride, not just for humanity, but for what they had accomplished together. Jarek stood beside her, watching as the final preparations were completed. "It seems your people have a saying for moments like this," he said, turning to her. "A new dawn." She smiled. Yes, a new dawn, indeed. As the engines roared to life and the ship ascended into the stars, Dr. Hayes knew that the universe had changed forever. A war had ended in a single day, but what had begun in its place would last for generations. Humanity had not just survived, it had risen to something greater, and the adventure was only just beginning.